Hi, welcome to week 8 of writing contemporary fiction. I thought we'd talk real quickly this week about what a story is. I know that seems a bit basic to put off till week 8, but after reading the stories this week, I just thought it might be worth sort of reconstituting what makes a story and why we tell stories, what stories are. In a recent book by New Zealand author Brian Boyd about the origin of stories, called The Origin of Stories, he proposes that storytelling is somehow innate, and that the reason we're all here and other people aren't is because we're the ones that told stories, and that stories encode information both about sort of things like where the watering hole is, but also about things like what's taboo, how do we respect other people, how do we deal with other tribes, and if we're not being violent, what are the best ways to use weapons. All those sorts of things are encoded in stories, and that stories are somehow built into our DNA. And whether or not that's true, one thing I can tell you about stories that I think you'll already know is that we all go around telling them all the time, every day, right? What did you do today? Tell a story. What are your plans for the next 10 years? We tell a story. How do you feel about Elaine? We tell a story. And so there's something about stories that's necessary, and that's always been necessary, and that's emotionally necessary. The idea being that a story is a way to convey information, that it's a fundamental act of communication that we're all involved with every day. And so the reason that I wanted to remind you all of that is because what we're essentially doing when we tell stories is that we are participating in a concrete narrative experience. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, we're trying to work someone through an experience, take them into the consciousness, into all the concrete details of setting and narration and all the bits and pieces of the world, so we can, in effect, have that experience. As a reader, we can have the experience that the author had, that the narrator had. And that's the point of a story. So we're not trying to, for instance, convey an idea. We're not trying to work through a didactic end. And we're not trying to even sort of convey an impression. Just the opposite. What we're trying to do is give someone the same experience as a character in a story. It has to be visceral, it has to be sensory, and it has to be immediate, and it has to be driven by some kind of urgent emotional impulse. Now, a lot of us are doing that, but some of us, I think, are still sort of using stories as vehicles for other ends. And I would argue that, first and foremost, when we read a story, what we're doing is having an experience, having an emotional and visceral and sensory experience. So if we're not doing that, I don't think we're reading a story, and I don't think we're writing a story. See you online.